For thousands of years, humanity has looked at the pyramids of Giza with awe and wonder.
To properly understand them, you need to know about the people who built them, their civilization, their society. There were tens of thousands of people here building the pyramids. Where's their settlement? For over 4,500 years, we've accepted a narrative that Pharaoh Khufu, armed with copper tools and brute labor, built the Great Pyramid in just 2 decades. Herodotus wrote about the Great Pyramid, as of course, who wouldn't? Because he came here as a historian and a tourist. We're not very complimentary about Khufu. But what if that story is not only wrong but a carefully maintained deception? In the ancient Egyptian pyramids lies a mystery so profound it could upend everything we know about human history. The pyramids might be the most famous and remarkable aspect of the Kingdom of Egypt, but they were only being built for a relatively short time. Hidden chambers, unexplained precision, and forbidden discoveries all point to a truth that mainstream archaeology refuses to confront. This isn't about conspiracy, it's about evidence long buried. So who really built the pyramids? Let's expose ancient history's biggest cover-up once and for all. Who built the pyramids? The official story is crumbling. Ask any Egyptologist and you'll get a version of the same story. Pharaoh Khufu commissioned the Great Pyramid around 2550 BC. It was built over 20 years by tens of thousands of workers using rudimentary copper tools, sledges, and sheer manpower. On the surface, it sounds like an inspiring tale of human ingenuity. But dig deeper, and the cracks in this narrative start to widen. Despite the pyramid's historical significance, there is no definitive contemporary record stating that Khufu built it. This is striking considering that ancient Egyptians were meticulous record keepers, detailing everything from food rations to religious ceremonies. Yet this colossal architectural feat, supposedly the pinnacle of their civilization, is curiously undocumented. Proponents of the mainstream theory often cite graffiti-like inscriptions found deep within narrow shafts as evidence of Khufu's involvement. But these marks were discovered long after the initial exploration of the pyramid, and their authenticity has been called into question. Even if genuine, a name scratched on a stone doesn't conclusively prove authorship. If Khufu truly built the Great Pyramid, why is his name absent from its more prominent interiors? More suspicious is the fact that the pyramid lacks any of the typical features of a royal tomb. No hieroglyphs glorify the pharaoh, no funerary objects, no preserved mummy, no burial inscriptions. In contrast, every other royal tomb from the Old Kingdom is richly adorned with carvings and grave goods. The Great Pyramid is barren. The deeper you look, the more you realize the narrative of Khufu as the builder isn't supported by direct evidence. It's inferred, built on assumptions made by 19th and 20th century archaeologists working with limited tools and an eagerness to fit discoveries into a convenient timeline. So if the evidence for Khufu's involvement is circumstantial at best, what does that mean for everything we think we know? Could the true story be more ancient, more complex than anything in the official record? These aren't idle questions, they go to the heart of who really built the pyramids and why the truth may have been hidden in the first place. Engineering the impossible. The Great Pyramid isn't just big, it's almost incomprehensibly precise. Rising originally to 481 feet and composed of an estimated 2.3 million limestone and granite blocks, some weighing as much as 80 tons, it stands as a feat that modern engineers still struggle to replicate. Yet we're told it was built by Bronze Age workers using chisels, sledges, and ropes. The math doesn't add up. The base of the pyramid is level within less than an inch across its 13-acre footprint. Its alignment to true north is accurate within 1/12 of a degree. Even today, with laser levels and satellite data, matching that precision would be a serious undertaking. According to architect Jean-Pierre Houdin and engineer Glenn Dash, this kind of orientation likely required advanced astronomical knowledge and tools we don't associate with ancient Egyptians of 2500 BC. Inside, the complexity only deepens. The king's chamber contains granite blocks weighing up to 80 tons, hauled from quarries in Aswan over 500 miles away. There is no clear explanation for how these blocks were transported, raised, and precisely placed with such accuracy, not by ancient sleds or wooden rollers, and certainly not on sandy, uneven terrain. Even more baffling is the evidence of advanced tooling. Engineer Christopher Dunn studied the granite within the king's chamber and noted signs of high-speed rotary drilling, clean smooth boreholes, and tool marks consistent with precision machinery. Granite is one of the hardest stones on Earth. Attempting to cut or drill it with copper tools, as mainstream archaeology suggests, would have taken years and produced crude results. Yet the pyramid's internal stones show smooth cuts, tight joints, and right angles that modern stonemasons would struggle to replicate without power tools. In fact, when researchers attempted to carve granite blocks using only the tools believed to be available at the time, they failed repeatedly. Their copper chisels dulled or broke within minutes, and the resulting grooves were jagged and shallow. Not only did they fail to reproduce the precision, but they couldn't even approach basic functionality. And then there's the question of how the blocks were lifted. The popular theory involves massive external ramps, yet no physical evidence of such a structure has ever been found at Giza. Even if one had existed, the logistics of hauling 80-ton blocks up hundreds of feet defies simple explanations. The required slope would have been so long and so resource-intensive that it would dwarf the pyramid itself. This is where the accepted narrative starts to break down. The pyramid's construction cannot be explained by conventional Bronze Age methods without invoking engineering miracles. Either the ancient Egyptians had access to forgotten technology, or someone else built the pyramid long before them using techniques we no longer understand. What's clear is that the builders possessed knowledge far beyond what mainstream history attributes to any known civilization of the time. The real question becomes, where did this knowledge come from, and why has its existence been denied for so long? The light that wasn't there. If thousands of workers carved, shaped, and positioned multi-ton blocks deep within the dark interior of the Great Pyramid, how did they see what they were doing? The most obvious answer, torches or oil lamps, falls apart under basic scrutiny. No soot. No scorch marks. No blackened ceilings or carbon residue. Despite extensive exploration of the pyramid's internal chambers, passageways, and shafts, archaeologists have found no trace of fire-based lighting. That's not just unusual, it's nearly impossible to reconcile with the idea that construction took place in total darkness or by open flame. Some historians have speculated that mirrors might have been used to bounce sunlight deep into the pyramid. But such a system would be extraordinarily inefficient, especially over long distances and around tight corners. The light would degrade rapidly with each reflection. There's also no evidence, no remnants of polished copper mirrors, no documentation, no supporting architectural features. So how did they do it? One possibility, however controversial, is that the builders had access to a lighting method that left no residue. Perhaps a form of electric or chemical illumination. While there is no direct evidence of electrical lighting inside the pyramid, the total lack of soot compels researchers to consider unorthodox options. And the ancient Egyptians were certainly no strangers to complex chemistry and engineering. Even mainstream Egyptologists acknowledge their use of advanced pigments, metallurgy, and architectural design. Moreover, this mystery isn't isolated. Similar questions arise in other ancient structures such as the tombs in the Valley of the Kings, where deep interior artwork was painted with incredible detail, again without evidence of torch usage. These anomalies might seem small, but in the context of the pyramid's broader mysteries, they are telling. The absence of soot is not just a missing piece, it's an indication that the puzzle itself may be more complex than we've been led to believe. What kind of civilization lights its way through solid stone corridors without fire? And why is mainstream archaeology so reluctant to ask? In the search for who really built the pyramids, even the shadows, or the lack of them, tell a story. And once again, it's not the story we've been taught. The biggest clue we might have, though, comes not from ancient tools or lighting methods, but from the rain. The Great Sphinx. The Great Sphinx of Giza has long stood as a silent companion to the pyramids, but it may also be the key to understanding just how ancient the Giza complex really is. And according to a growing number of geologists and independent researchers, the Sphinx might predate ancient Egypt by thousands of years, possibly pointing to construction in or before 7000 BC. This theory, known as the Sphinx water erosion hypothesis, is based not on speculation but hard science, pioneered by John Anthony West and geologist Dr. Robert Schoch. The hypothesis challenges the mainstream view that the Sphinx was built around 2500 BC during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu. Schock's analysis of the weathering patterns on the Sphinx, specifically the deep rounded undulations and vertical fissures, suggests prolonged exposure to heavy rainfall, not windblown sand. This type of erosion is consistent with conditions present in the Nile Valley only at the end of the last ice age. After that, Egypt's climate became increasingly arid, transforming into the desert we know today. Here's the critical issue: if the Sphinx shows signs of water damage from 7000 BC or earlier, it must have already existed at that time. That would make it at least twice as old as the accepted date for its creation. And if that's true, the entire timeline of the Giza complex collapses because it suggests that either a forgotten civilization existed before dynastic Egypt, or that the ancient Egyptians inherited and reworked existing megalithic structures. Even mainstream Egyptologists have struggled to explain away this evidence. The idea that the damage occurred post-construction during occasional flooding has been debunked by comparing the Sphinx's erosion patterns with other nearby structures built around the same time, none of which show the same kind of deep water wear. To compound the mystery, there is no known inscription definitively linking Khafra to the Sphinx. What we do know is that Khafra likely restored the statue, possibly even recarving the face to resemble himself, but building it. The geological evidence says otherwise. If the Sphinx is truly 9,000 years old or more, it suggests that an advanced pre-Egyptian civilization with sophisticated architectural, artistic, and astronomical knowledge once inhabited the Giza Plateau. This idea ties directly into the growing body of evidence supporting the existence of a lost global culture, now buried under millennia of shifting sands and academic resistance. So what does the Sphinx tell us? The story of Giza didn't begin in 2500 BC. It may have started millennia earlier, during an era mainstream history refuses to recognize. This inconvenient evidence is why the Sphinx remains one of the clearest markers of ancient history's biggest cover-up. Because if the Sphinx is older, so too might be the pyramid standing beside it. Hidden chambers and forbidden doors. The Great Pyramid has been studied for centuries, yet we're only just beginning to understand what lies inside, and what's being kept from view. Over the last few decades, scientific discoveries have revealed the presence of secret chambers and sealed passages hidden within the structure. But instead of opening them to the world, officials have shut the door, literally and figuratively, on further exploration. Why? The first major revelation came in the early 1990s, when German engineer Rudolf Gantenbrink sent a small robot called U-Port into a narrow shaft in the Queen's Chamber. What it discovered stunned researchers: a tiny limestone door fitted with metal handles, a material never found elsewhere inside the pyramid. This wasn't just a symbolic feature. It was a sealed barrier, clearly designed to prevent access to whatever lay beyond. Before Gantenbrink could investigate further, Egyptian authorities abruptly shut down his work and revoked his access. For years, nothing happened. Then, in 2002, a National Geographic team drilled a small hole in the door, only to discover another stone slab behind it. That second door has never been opened. All requests for further investigation have been consistently denied by Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities. This raises a fundamental question: if there's nothing extraordinary behind those doors, why not let researchers look? Then in 2017, a multinational team used advanced muon tomography, a non-invasive scanning technique using cosmic rays, to analyze the pyramid's interior. What they found made headlines: a massive hidden void above the Grand Gallery, completely sealed off and with no known access points. It's estimated to be at least 30 meters long, making it the largest discovery inside the pyramid since the 19th century. Despite the excitement, no one has been allowed to explore it physically. Egyptian officials cited safety concerns and the need for preservation. But critics argue the real motive is control. Who really built the pyramids may be less important to certain authorities than who gets to tell the story. The idea that the Great Pyramid might contain undisclosed chambers, possibly filled with unknown artifacts or technologies, aligns with claims made by researchers like Christopher Dunn and Graham Hancock, that the builders had access to knowledge far beyond that of dynastic Egypt. These sealed doors, unexplored voids, and sudden bureaucratic shutdowns are not the signs of a transparent scientific effort. They are evidence of obstruction, of a system that chooses secrecy over discovery. And in a monument that has stood for over 4,000 years, it's not the erosion or decay that threatens the truth. It's the refusal to look deeper. Until those chambers are opened and studied without restriction, the world will continue to wonder, what are they hiding inside the Great Pyramid, and more importantly, why? Zahi Hawass, who's guarding the gates? To understand why so many secrets of the pyramids remain unexplored, you have to understand the man who controls access to them, Zahi Hawass. For decades, he has been the dominant force in Egyptian archaeology, at times acting more like a gatekeeper than a researcher. With powerful positions such as Secretary General of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities and later Minister of Antiquities, Hawass has had the final word on who gets to excavate, what is studied, and what findings are made public. While he's been praised for raising Egypt's international archaeological profile, critics argue that he has systematically suppressed investigations that don't align with the official timeline. Alternative theories, independent researchers, and scientific findings that challenge the narrative of pyramids built by Khufu around 2500 BC are routinely dismissed or ignored under his leadership. When German engineer Rudolf Gantenbrink discovered the mysterious door inside the Great Pyramid in the 1990s, it was Hawass who swiftly halted further research. Likewise, when National Geographic drilled through that door years later and found another sealed stone behind it, no effort was made to investigate further. Hawass provided no clear scientific rationale, only vague appeals to preservation and national security. His resistance has become a pattern. Researchers like Robert Bauval, who proposed the Orion correlation theory, and John Anthony West, advocate of the Sphinx water erosion hypothesis, have been publicly ridiculed or stonewalled by Egyptian antiquities authorities. Yet many of their ideas are supported by peer-reviewed geological or astronomical data. Is this simply academic conservatism or something more calculated? Some believe Hawass is protecting Egypt's historical narrative out of national pride or a desire to prevent what he sees as outsiders from rewriting his country's legacy. Others suggest his resistance might be driven by more pragmatic concerns, such as maintaining the flow of tourism and state-sponsored funding, both of which depend on a neat, unchallenged version of Egyptian history. But whatever his motives, the effect is the same. Key discoveries remain locked away, and the question of who really built the pyramids is kept in a narrow frame, one that excludes any possibility of an advanced pre-dynastic civilization. This makes Zahi Hawass more than a historical figure. He is the living embodiment of ancient history's biggest cover-up, a gatekeeper ensuring that only one version of the past gets told, even if compelling evidence suggests there's much more buried beneath the surface. Until that gate is opened, the truth remains just out of reach, and we may never truly know if another ancient civilization existed before the ancient Egyptians. Evidence for a forgotten civilization. When the physical evidence no longer supports the official story, we must ask whether the story itself needs to change. Increasingly, researchers are uncovering signs that the builders of the Great Pyramid may not have been the Old Kingdom Egyptians at all, but a much older, more advanced civilization now lost to history. The idea isn't new, but the supporting evidence is becoming harder to ignore. Here's who really built the pyramids. One of the most compelling arguments comes from Robert Bauval's Orion correlation theory. He noticed that the three pyramids at Giza align almost perfectly with the stars in Orion's belt, but not as they appeared around 2500 BC. Instead, the pyramid's layout matches Orion's position in the sky circa 10,500 BC, thousands of years before the pharaohs ruled Egypt. For this to be a coincidence stretches probability beyond reason. It suggests that whoever designed the Giza plateau had both astronomical knowledge and the tools to encode it in stone. This date aligns with the end of the last ice age, a period also linked to the Sphinx water erosion hypothesis. Combined, these findings imply that the Giza monuments, or at least their original foundations, could be more than twice as old as mainstream archaeology accepts. Enter the theory of a forgotten advanced civilization, as popularized by writers like Graham Hancock. He proposes that a global society with sophisticated knowledge of engineering, mathematics, and astronomy may have thrived before a cataclysmic event wiped most of it from the historical record. Surviving groups, he argues, passed on their knowledge to cultures like those in ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Indus Valley. Supporting this theory are other ancient sites like Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey, dated to around 9600 BC. It features complex stonework and megalithic pillars with astronomical alignments, built by people who, according to conventional timelines, should have only been hunter-gatherers. Closer to Egypt, Structures like the Osirian at Abydos and the massive granite boxes at the Serapeum of Saqqara show machining marks and construction techniques far too advanced for the dynastic Egyptians who supposedly built them. These anomalies have led engineers like Christopher Dunn to suggest that high-precision tools, possibly even power tools, must have been used. This supports the idea that Egypt's earliest monuments may not have been built from scratch, but inherited. What emerges is a consistent pattern: signs of technological sophistication without historical context, engineering feats without clear authorship, and astronomical alignments that don't fit the accepted timeline. These clues point to the existence of a civilization operating at a high level long before recorded history began. And yet, these ideas are dismissed, not because they lack merit, but because they don't fit the model. If such a civilization existed, it would change everything we think we know, not just about Egypt, but about humanity's past. Which leads us to a critical question: why is mainstream archaeology so resistant to this possibility? Why this changes everything? If the Great Pyramid wasn't built by Khufu around 2500 BC, but instead by an older, technologically advanced civilization, the implications are enormous. We wouldn't just be correcting a few historical dates, we would be rewriting the very foundation of human history. Consider what this would mean: that humans capable of extraordinary architectural precision, long-distance logistics, and advanced astronomy existed thousands of years before any recognized civilization. The story of civilization rising gradually from primitive tribes to ancient kingdoms is not a slow upward climb, but a fragmented recollection of a world that already reached great heights, and then fell. The pushback from mainstream archaeology isn't surprising. Accepting the possibility of a pre-dynastic advanced civilization doesn't just threaten established timelines, it undermines careers, institutions, textbooks, and even national identities. Egypt, for instance, has built a powerful cultural and economic narrative around the legacy of its pharaohs. Acknowledging that its greatest monuments might precede Egyptian civilization could destabilize that narrative. There's also the academic aspect to consider. Changing the official story means re-evaluating centuries of interpretation, which many scholars are understandably reluctant to do. Yet science demands that when evidence contradicts theory, the theory must adapt, not the evidence. From unexplained construction techniques to sealed chambers and astronomical alignments, the signs are there. Add to that the geological data surrounding the Sphinx and the unparalleled precision inside the Great Pyramid, and the conclusion becomes harder to avoid: the builders knew things we've forgotten. And if their knowledge was lost, what exactly did they know? Was it just engineering and astronomy? Or does the Great Pyramid still guard something even greater: information, technology, or relics capable of reshaping the way we see ourselves? The suppression of exploration, the denial of alternative theories, and the gatekeeping of discovery all serve to maintain a narrative that cannot stand up to scrutiny. But the truth doesn't disappear just because it's ignored. It remains there, etched in stone, sealed in chambers, and buried in timelines that no longer make sense. This isn't just academic resistance. It may be ancient history's biggest cover-up. We are standing on the edge of rediscovery. All that remains is the will to look deeper. If we find the courage to break from rigid narratives, to explore forbidden chambers, and to follow the evidence wherever it leads, we might finally uncover who really built the pyramids, and why. Are we ready to confront what's been hidden for thousands of years?